Hello my loves, Tony here from TL Yarn Crafts and welcome to this tutorial for the Snowdrop Kerchief. Liven up a chilly winter day with the beauty and elegance of the Snowdrop Kerchief. This mini shawl gets its charm from the beginner-friendly crochet lace pattern worked from the bottom up. The arched picot border is the perfect finishing touch. Style your kerchief as a scarf with a belted trench coat, or tie it in your hair as a bandana for a whimsical addition to your everyday outfit. If you're ready to make the Snowdrop Kerchief, so am I. Let's start by talking materials. The Snowdrop Kerchief only requires a few supplies, the most important being this gorgeous yarn right here. This is Hobbii's Friends Extra Fine Merino, and it is extra fine indeed. If you've been nervous or concerned about trying extra fine merino wool, this is your opportunity to do it. It's got amazing bounce, stretch. The drape after blocking is unreal, and it comes in so many amazing colors. We're using this lovely dusty pink, and I think it is absolutely perfect for the effect that we achieve with the Snowdrop Kerchief. So you'll need 2 skeins of that for our project today. You're also going to need a 4mm crochet hook, a pair of scissors, a tapestry needle, and some locking stitch markers. You'll want to have some wet blocking supplies available right at the end to block this to perfection. I am going to be using a slightly thicker yarn that's easier to see in the demo, and I'm so excited to show you how to make this beautiful scarf. Let's get started. Let's jump right in with row 1. So we're going to begin with a slip knot. Make sure you leave that tail long enough to weave in later, and tighten that slip knot down on your hook. We're going to begin with a chain 4. So we yarn over and pull through for 1, 2, 3, and 4. This counts as our first double crochet plus a chain 1, and we're going to work into that first chain for the remainder of this row. So we need to place 2 double crochet, a chain 1, and then 3 additional double crochet into that 4th chain from the hook. So first we yarn over, insert into that chain, yarn over and pull up the loop, 3 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through 2, then yarn over and pull through 2 again to complete a double crochet. So there's the first. Now we need a second. So 2 double crochet, followed by a chain 1. Then we're going to do 3 double crochet. Here's 1, here's 2, and 3. So that completes our first row. We had our starting chain, 2 double crochets, a chain space, and 3 additional double crochets. So now we're going to chain 7. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. That counts as our first treble crochet plus 3 additional chains. And now we can turn our work, and we're going to single crochet, chain 3, single crochet into the chain 1 space. Remember, that's all the way over here in the middle of the row. So that's single crochet, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and another single crochet. Just like that. From here we need to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to place a treble in the top of our turning chain, which is over here. So for a treble, we need to yarn over our hook 2 times, and then we're going to insert into the top of that turning chain, yarn over the hook, and pull up a loop. We now have 4 loops on our hook. Yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops again. Wonderful. We've now completed row 2, and this is what your work should look like. Lovely. Let's keep going. Moving on to row 3, we're going to start with a chain 4. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. That counts as your first double crochet plus a chain 1 throughout the pattern. I'm going to turn my work, and now I need to place a shell at the base of this chain. So we're going to go into that treble crochet from the previous row and place a shell. And a shell is 3 double crochet, chain 1, 3 double crochet. So here we go. 3 double crochet. There's 1. Here's 2 and 3. Chain 1 and 3 more double crochet. Here's 1, 2, and 3. Lovely. Now we're going to skip this chain 3 space and place a single crochet in this chain 3 space, this one here at the middle of the row. So single crochet right into here. And from there, we need to place a shell in the fourth chain of our turning chain. So let's find that chain first. So I like to start here at the bottom of the chain and count up. So if we count these little bumps, we've got 1, 2, 3, and 4. What that does is leave this chain 3 open, and that's what we want to do. So we're going to work in this fourth chain here, and we need to place a shell. So we're going to yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through for 2 and 2. So there's our first double crochet of the shell. Here's the second and the third. We follow that with a chain 1, and then we need to put 3 more double crochet into that same chain. There's 2 and 3. And then we also need to chain 1 and place 1 last double crochet into that same chain. It's getting a little crowded now. There we go. So when you finish that row, look at that. It kind of looks like a heart. It's so cute. So when you finish that row, it should look like this. So we've got a double crochet and a chain 1. Remember, our starting chain 4 counts as a double and a chain 1. A shell here, a single in that center chain 3 space, skip the next space and put a shell, chain 1, and a double crochet in the fourth chain of the turning chain. Well done. Let's move on to row 4. We're going to start with a chain 7, yarn over, pull through for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. We're going to turn. We're going to skip this first chain space as well as the next 3 double crochet. We're going to single, chain 3, single into this chain space here. So single, chain 3, and single again into that chain 1 space. Now we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and we're going to place a treble in the next single crochet. Remember, that single crochet is right here. So we're going to yarn over twice and treble into that single crochet. Very good. Now we need to chain 3, and we're going to single, chain 3, single in the next chain 1 space, which is right here. So single, chain 3, and single again into that space. We're going to finish up with a chain 3, and we're going to place a treble in the last chain space, which is here. So remember, we had the shell, chain 1, and a double in this last stitch here. We're going to work into this final chain 1 space and place a treble there. Just like that. So this is what this row looks like. Trebles on either side with our chain 3s, a single chain 3, single in that same space, a set of chain 3s, and a treble right in the middle. Beautiful. This is coming along so gorgeously. We're doing a great job. Let's move on to row 5. 1, 2, 3, 4 chains to start. Turn our work. We're going to place a shell in the stitch at the base of the chain. So remember, that's 3 double crochet. There's 1, 2, and 3, followed by a chain 1 and 3 more double crochet. Here's 1, here's 2, and 3. Oh, 1 more. Come on. There we are. Gets a little crowded is all. So now we're going to skip this chain 3 space here and single crochet in the following chain 3 space. Marvelous. And then we're going to shell in the next treble, which is here in the middle. So remember, that's a double crochet 3 times. There's 2 and 3. Chain 1, 3 more double crochet. 1, 2, 3. Now we're going to skip this next chain 3 here and double crochet into this chain 3 space, or single crochet rather, into that chain 3 space. And then we're going to place a shell, a chain 1, and a double crochet in the 4th chain of our turning chain. So our turning chain is here. So we need to count up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're going to place a shell here. So that's 1, 2, 3, double crochets, chain 1, 3 more double crochets, 1, here's 2, and 3. Follow that with a chain 1 and 1 last double crochet into that same stitch. So now we have 3 shells in our row. I'm sure you can start to see that pattern emerging. So we're alternating shells and then these more lacy rows, shells and then a lacy row. So that just finished row 5. Let's move on to row 6. So we're going to start with a chain 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, which as always counts as our first treble crochet plus 3 more chains, and turn our work. We're going to skip this very first chain space as well as these first 3 double crochets, and we're going to single, chain 3, single in that next chain space. So single, chain 3, and single again into that chain space. We're going to follow that with a chain 3 and treble into the next single crochet, which is all the way down here. So right between these 2 shells, we've got our single, and we're going to place a treble there. There's 1, 2, and 3. Chain 3. We're going to go into our next chain space, which is here, with a single, chain 3, and a single, and follow that with a chain 3. Treble into the next single crochet, which is right here. Okay? Treble goes there. And don't forget to chain 3 after that treble. Now we're going to find our next chain 1 space, a single, and 3 chains, and 1 more single goes there. Fabulous. Chain 3, and then we're going to place a treble in the 3rd chain of our turning chain. So yarn over twice, find that 3rd chain, count from the bottom, 1, 2, 3, and we're going right in there. Wonderful. It's looking so good. Let's keep going. It's time for row 7, so let's get it going. We're going to chain 4 to start. 1, 2, 3, 4. Turn our work, and we're placing a shell in the stitch at the base of our chain. So that's 3 double crochets. 1, here's 2, and 3. Chain 1, 3 more double crochets here. 1, here's 2, and 3. Now we're going to skip this chain 3 space here, single in that next chain 3 space, just like that. Now we're going to put a shell in the next treble. So that's 3 double crochet. 1, 2, 3. Chain 1, 3 more double crochet. 1, 2, 3. Skip this space, single in the next space. Wonderful. So we're skipping this chain 3 space, shell in the next space. So that's double 3 times, chain 1, and 3 more doubles. There's 1, here's 2, and 3. Skip the space, single in the following. Skip the space, then it's shell, chain 1, double crochet in the 4th chain of the turning chain. Let's find that correct chain. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's right here, and we're going to place a shell. There's 1, 2, 3 double crochet, chain 1, 3 more double crochet, 2, 3. We're going to follow that with a chain 1 and place 1 more double crochet into that same stitch. So we can really start to see the pattern emerging. I think this is just so gorgeous. Just a few more setup rows to go. Let's move on to row 8. We'll start with a chain 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and turn our work. We're going to skip that first space and these 3 double crochet, and we're going to single, chain 3, single in the next space here. Single, chain 3, single in that next space. We need to chain 3 now and treble in the next single crochet. Chain 3, single, chain 3, single in the next chain 1 space. 1, 2, 3, and a single. chain 3, treble in the next single, which is here. I think you're catching on to the groove now. Chain 3, find your next chain 1 space and give that a single, chain 3, and a single. Beautiful. Chain 3. Guess what's next? Treble in the single. Yup, you got it. There we go. Chain 3, single, chain 3, single into that next chain 1 space. Now we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and we're going to treble in the third chain of this turning chain. There's 1, 2, 3 right here. Beautiful. So that completes our setup rows. Now we're going to go into our repeat rows, which are rows 9 and 10. So we're going to walk them through one time, but they're essentially a repeat of what we've done here. Just in the pattern, it's written in a way that it can repeat for subsequent rows. So let's do row 9, chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and turn our work. Shell in the stitch at the base of the chain. So that's 3 double crochet, 1, 2, 3 double crochet, chain 1, 3 more double crochet, 1, 2, and 3. We're going to single crochet into this chain space here. So we're skipping this one, single in this space. Skip the space, shell in the treble right here. So that's 1, 2, 3, chain 1, 1, 2, 3. Skip this space, single in the next space. So that's the repeat across. So shell in the treble, single in this chain 3 space between the single crochets. So shell in the treble, 1, 2, 3, chain 1, 1, 2, 3. And then single in the space between the 2 singles. So now I need to do it one more time. Shell in the treble, 2, 3, chain 1, 3 more double crochet, 1, 2, 3, and then single in the space between the 2 single crochets. Wonderful. Now we need to place a shell, chain 1, and then another double crochet in the 4th chain of the turning chain. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. It leaves these 3 chains open. So let's do that. Shell, 1, 2, 3, chain 1, 1, 2, 3, followed by a chain 1, and then just 1 more double crochet. So there's your row 9 repeat. So it's shell, single, shell, single, shell, single, all the way across, ending with a shell in the 4th chain of the turning chain. Let's move on to row 10, which is the second row of our repeat. And that starts with a chain 7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then we're turning our work. We're skipping this first space and these 3 double crochet, and into this space we put a single, chain 3, and a single, followed by a chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and a treble into the single. And that's the repeat. So chain 3, single here, chain 3, single in the same space, followed by a chain 3 and a treble in the single, followed by a chain 3. Let's do it again. Single, chain 3, single into that chain 1 space, followed by a chain 3, treble into the single crochet, followed by a chain 3. Again, single in the space, chain 3, single again, and then we chain 3 and treble in the single. And we're just repeating that for our subsequent rows. Chain 3, single, chain 3, single into the space, chain 3, and a treble goes into the third chain of our turning chain, just like that. And that is row 10. Lovely. So these rows will continue to build on each other, and you're going to see this motif continue to repeat. You want to repeat rows 9 and 10 until you have 48 total rows, and then you'll repeat row 9 once more. Join me back here and we'll do row 50 together. Mine is not going to be as big as yours, but we'll at least do row 50 together so we can see how we need to finish things off before we move into our border. After a bit more progress, let's just pretend that I've made it to row 50 in my pattern, that I have 49 total rows. But essentially we're repeating this lovely shell pattern all the way up, and I completed row 49. So let's do row 50 together. So I'm going to insert my hook, chain 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Remember, that's our treble plus a chain 3, and turn our work. So here for row 50, once again, we're going to skip this chain space and the first 3 double crochets. Usually here we'd place a single, chain 3, and another single, but instead for this last row to help set us up for our border, we're just going to place a single crochet here, and that's it. Now we're going to follow that with a chain 3, and we're going to place a treble in the next single, which is here between our 2 shells. And that's the repeat across the row. Chain 3, single in the space, chain 3, treble in the single. Chain 3, single in the space, chain 3, treble in the single. Right there. Chain 3, single in the space, chain 3, treble in the single. So what we're getting is a nice clean flat edge along the top here, because that's what we want. So continue that across your row and meet me when you get down to your turning chain. I'm here towards the end of row 50. I need to 1, 2, 3, chain 3, single in the space, chain 3, and then I'm going to treble in the third chain of the turning chain. 1, 2, 3 right here. So that completes row 50, and that is the body of our shawl. Now we need to move into the border, which starts with setup rounds. One thing to note is that these setup rounds are worked over the edges of our shawl, and they're broken down in that way. So part 1 will work over the top edge. Part 2 will work over this first side, and part 3 will work over this third side. So let's jump into part 1 of our setup round for our border. And that begins with a chain 1, and we're going to turn our work. We're going to place a single crochet at the stitch at the base of this chain. So here was our chain 1, and here's the stitch at the base. We're just working under 2 loops of that stitch to place a single crochet. And now we're going to put 2 single crochets into this chain space, 1 and 2. 1 single into the next stitch, 2 singles into the next chain space, 1 and 2. Single in the stitch, 2 singles in the space. Single in the stitch, 2 singles in the space. And we're going to repeat that across the row. Single in the stitch, 2 singles in the space. Join me when you get to the end of the row, and we'll move on to part 2 of the setup round. Now I'm at the end of part 1 of the setup round for our border. That's a mouthful, oh my goodness. So I just placed a single crochet into the stitch. Now I need to put 2 single crochets into this turning chain space, and then we need to find the 4th chain of the turning chain and place a single crochet there as well. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember that first 4 chains of that chain 7 counts as a treble. So we are placing a single crochet in the top of that treble stitch. Right now we need to move on to part 2, it's going to start with a chain 1. Now at this point you can mark this chain. We will need to find it later. So just pop in a locking stitch marker so you know where it is, because you will need it later. Now from here, for part 2, after we've done that chain 1, we need to put 3 single crochets into this space here. Remember, this is a treble, so we're going to put 3 single crochets there because of the height of that stitch. Now our next stitch here is a double crochet, and a double crochet just gets 2 singles. Here's a treble, and that's going to get 3. 1, 2, 3. Here's a double, and that's going to get 2. 1 and 2. Trebles get 3. 1, 2, 3. And doubles get only 2. There's 1 and 2. So we're going to repeat this along the way until we get to this bottom tip, and I'll show you how we'll turn this corner. Here we are at the end of part 2 of the setup round of our border. I put 3 singles around this treble, and now I need to put 2 singles around this double to finish things up. Now the very last step here for part 2 is to place 3 single crochet at the base of this first shell. Remember that first shell was worked into a single crochet? We need to put 3 singles right there into that space, just like that. And that's how we'll turn the corner. No chains or anything needed at that point. Now we're moving on to part 3. As before, we're going to work 2 singles around the double and 3 singles around the treble. Again, 2 singles around the double and 3 singles around the treble. 2 singles around the double, 3 singles around the treble. So continue that until you reach the tip of the shawl here, and I'll show you how we'll finish up part 3 and then move on to our actual border rows. And here I am at the end of part 3 of that setup round of my border, and I've just got this treble here to go. So I'm going to place 3 single crochet there. And then to finish things off, first I need to chain 1. Make sure you don't make that chain too tight because we'll need to work into it. And then I'm going to join with a slip stitch into the first single crochet of the round, which is right here. So just going under both loops of that single crochet, and I'm going to pull through for a slip stitch. So that completes parts 1, 2, and 3 of the border setup round. Now rows 1 and 2 of the border are only going to be worked along these 2 bottom edges of the shawl. We will no longer be working any stitches along the top. Just keep that in mind as we move forward. So now moving into row 1, we need to chain 1, turn our work, and we should now have the wrong side of the work facing us. We're going to place a single crochet in that chain 1 space, that one right here that we made before the join. Place a single crochet there, and then we need to mark that with a locking stitch marker. So I'm just going to pop that marker in there, close it up just to make sure it doesn't go anywhere, and we can find that single crochet later. So after placing that single crochet and marking it, we need to single crochet in the next stitch, which is right here. And then from here, we're going to jump into the repeat for this row. So we're going to chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to skip the next 3 single crochets here. So here's the one we just worked into. We're skipping 1, 2, 3, and we're going to single in the next. And that's the repeat. Chain 5, 2, 3, 4, 5, skip 3, 1, 2, 3, single in the next. Chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, skip 3, 1, 2, 3, single in the next. One more time together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chains, skip 3, single in the next. And we're going to repeat that all the way across these 2 bottom edges of our shawl. Now, when you get to the bottom here, we're not going to treat this like a corner. We're just going to treat these single crochets just like we've been treating them on our straight edges. So when you reach here and you single crochet, we're simply going to skip 3 and single in the next to turn that corner. So continue across your entire bottom side of your shawl and join me when you get back up here. I'm reaching the end of row 1. I just placed a single crochet. I need to chain 3, 2, 3, 4, 5, not 3, 5, not 3. I'm going to skip 3 and single in the next stitch. So that completes my repeat, but the last step here is to single crochet into this chain space. So remember, I marked it last time just to make sure I didn't lose it, and now I'm going to place a single in that space. I can put that marker away. It's all done. And now I can chain one and turn my work. Now for the second and most important, most beautiful row of our border, here we go. So the very first step is to skip the next two single crochets. We're going right into this chain space and we're only working into the spaces all the way across. So here's the repeat of what we need to put into this space. Maybe watch me first and then we'll do it together, okay? So first, single crochet 2, then half double crochet 1, and then double crochet 1. Next, we need to place a picot, and here's how we'll do that. I'll bring you in a little closer so you can really see what I'm doing, okay? So we've got 2 singles, a half double, and a double so far. Now we need to picot. Picot is chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to slip stitch in the first of those 3 chains. So I'm going to catch 2 loops of that chain, yarn over. I'm going to hold on to this fabric in the back to easily pull through to slip stitch. Now we need to place another double crochet, a half double crochet, and 2 singles into that chain space. So this is what it should look like. It should kind of grow up in this arch with a picot right at the top. Absolutely lovely. So we're going to repeat that for each chain 5 space across. So now let's do it together. 2 singles, 1 and 2, half double, which is yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops on hook, and then followed with a double. I'm going to just scoot those down a little bit. Then we do our picot. Remember that the picot is chain 3, 1, 2, 3, slip stitch into the first of those 3 chains. So yarn over and pull through everything. Double crochet into the space, half double into the space, 2 singles into the space. And yours should look like this. So lovely. I am obsessed with this border. It's so fun and so pretty. Let's do that again. So right into this next chain 5 space, 2 singles, half double, and a double, picot, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, slip stitch into the first of those 3 chains, and pull through. Double in the space, half double in the space, 2 singles in the space. Right? Absolutely lovely. So this is what your border is going to start looking like. So you're going to be placing that collection of stitches into each of these chain spaces. Take your time, double check it. We really want these to be uniform. It just adds to the beauty and the repetition that we find in the fabric of this shawl. Continue that all the way across until you get here, and I will join you so we can finish up together. I am in the home stretch. I just have a little bit more to go. Look at all these lovely arches happening. I just love what this does to the bottom of the shawl. Let's do this last chain space together. So remember, we're going to do 2 singles, a half double, a double, our picot. So 1, 2, 3 chains, slip stitch into the first chain, another double, a half double, and 2 singles, 1 and 2. To finish things up, we need to slip stitch in each of the next 2 stitches. So here's the first, and the second is our marked stitch. The reason we mark this is just to make sure we end up in the right place, okay? So insert into the next stitch, yarn over, pull through the stitch as well as the loop on the hook for a slip stitch, and then we can take out this marker and slip stitch into this stitch. Wonderful. At this point, we are all done stitching. We can fasten off and lift that loop up and out. Let's back things on up. There we go. So now you can really see. So this is my sample that I made with you today. And then this is the sample that I made with Hobie's Cotton Merino. You can see the beautiful drape that it gets from blocking. So I beg, beg, beg you, do not skip your blocking step. Your last steps are going to be to weave in all of your ends. You should only have maybe 2, maybe 4, depending on how you joined your new yarn. And then you can wet block this, especially if you worked with this extra fine merino. This takes amazingly to blocking. It might feel a little bit stiff while you're working with it, but once you block it, I mean, it's just light as a feather and absolutely beautiful. So just block to those final dimensions, and then you will be all done with your snowdrop kerchief. Thanks so much for joining me for this tutorial, and I am very excited to hear how your project goes.